You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good day and welcome to everyone to Diakonia, a call to service. My name is Deacon Dave Brentzik. I serve as the Associate Director of the Office of the Diaconate for the Archdiocese. I also serve as Deacon at Holy Guardian Angels Parish in Brookfield, LaGrange Park. And joining us today is a familiar face and voice, Deacon Richard Hudzik, the former vicar for the deacons and now the Director of Ongoing Formation for the Diaconate Office. Richard serves at Mary Mother of Divine Grace Parish in Westchester. Welcome, Richard. It's so nice to have you back.
It's great to be here, to be resurrected from my comatose semi-retirement. So it's good to be alive.
Our show is dedicated to talking about the call to serve. Is for all God's people, not just those who are ordained deacons of the Catholic Church. It's not a show about deacons, but a show by deacons. The idea is to invite our listeners to learn about and consider various aspects of ministry, but also meet people of faith who are devoting their lives to the service of God, His Church, and His people. And today we are joined by a special guest, Tiffany Borio, who has a wonderful background in ministry. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Cool. Good morning, Tiffany. Good to see you.
Good morning, Richard.
Tiffany, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your work, your ministry?
Sure. I started a sabbatical in August of 2021 to finish a Master of Arts in Spiritual Formation and Leadership and discern my next season of life and vocation. And the vision that came out of that time as I listened to the Lord was to offer soul care for people who are working in healthcare. And so I've spent the past year doing additional training and education to prepare for that work and have now launched a small private practice offering coaching, spiritual direction, and community learning experiences called Quotidian Joy, Soul Care for Sustainability.
And before you went into this field, what was your background?
Yeah, so I actually studied piano performance in college and then went on to complete a library science degree at Rosary College, which is now Dominican University in River Forest, Illinois. So my first job was as a music librarian at Moody Bible Institute, and from there I moved to Nairobi, Kenya to serve at a Christian international school called Roslyn Academy.
How long were you in Nairobi?
I was there for 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, when you said you mentioned coaching, what does that look like?
Yeah, so coaching is an intentional, ongoing conversation that empowers a person or a group of people to fully live out God's calling. And so the coach offers a non-judgmental space so that you can listen to yourself and to the Holy Spirit to move forward in any number of ways. So it's wonderful if you're feeling stuck or burned out, if you're in a season of transition or discernment, decision making, or when you're reaching for goals or change or transformation. And the coachee leaves each session with one or more points of discovery and action steps they can take to move forward. So it's a progressive transformation. And I've personally worked with a coach for the past 5 years on everything from leading in a chaotic environment to discerning my move from nursing to soul care to planning a celebration, to navigating how to love my family well when we don't agree on everything. So in tandem with spiritual direction and coaching has been very valuable and imperative in my own personal growth, leadership development, and walk with God. And I'm excited about being able to just offer that as a gift to others.
Could I jump in and ask, could you parse the difference between spiritual direction and the role of the spiritual director as opposed to the role of the coach? How do you...
So one of the... Oh, go ahead.
No, just how you... what the difference is.
Yeah. So both spiritual direction and coaching are going to ideally lead to, right, this ability to listen to the spirit and the movement of God in one's life, as well as growth and transformation. Spiritual direction I really view as being present to what is and learning to notice and name and nurture God's presence with you in all of life's experience. And so even though the posture is similar in that as a spiritual director, right, also holding that non-judgmental, loving, listening presence for someone to explore their relationship with God and listen together for the movement of the Spirit. It's a slower pace than coaching because it's really allowing us to learn how to sit in the middle of it all and tend to Christ's presence there. Whereas coaching has a bit more of a forward momentum because you have those action steps and you may meet more regularly. So they both can be a wonderful way to connect with yourself and with God. And sometimes it's great to be doing both at the same time. And sometimes there's a season that may be more appropriate and helpful to be doing one versus the other.
Okay.
So with coaching, is there more like a goal in mind?
I really like to, I mean, some people definitely are going to come in with some goals because some people are just goal oriented. I really like to think of a trajectory or a telos or an outcome. So it's like, what would you like to be different, 6 months from now, whether it's in you or in your circumstances, just like what changes are you reaching for? What growth are you looking to see happen in your life and situation?
Now you have a website. It's called The Quotidian Joy. How did you come up with that? What was that from?
Yeah, so quotidian simply means belonging to everyday ordinary. And I first encountered the word in the title of Kathleen Norris's book, The Quotidian Mysteries, Liturgy, Laundry, and Women's Work. And so that phrase, quotidian joy, has always just encapsulated this concept of noticing and nurturing the joy of salvation and life and healing in the very ordinary, mundane things of life.
And the website, people can find the website where?
Quotidianjoy.com.
Okay.
Very cool. Very cool. And up on the screen, if you're on watching this on YouTube as opposed to listening to this podcast, some of the pages from quotidianjoy.com are up on the screen at the moment. It's very well crafted, nicely designed website, I think. Tiffany, I wanted to ask, move the direction, turn the corner a bit, if we could, to. I want to talk about the concept of a rule of life. Now, in other contexts, you and I have talked about that, and I'm fascinated by this, and I want you to correct any misapprehensions I have. But here's my take. That I find myself, and hopefully others listening in or watching can identify with this phenomenon, but the idea of being supercharged or enthusiastic, great level of commitment. I'm going to, with God's grace, I want to do something new with my life, or I want to really engaged actively in prayer. I want to have a set pattern of prayer, of spiritual practices, and I go like gangbusters for the first 48 hours, first 2 weeks. I'll give myself some credit, but it's like the New Year's resolution. I'm going to go to the gym every day and lose 20 pounds. That sort of thing, and we don't. And my initial fervor seems to wane. It becomes, I just lose track. And we've talked about, you and I have talked about a rule of life, and that's some of the work that you're doing, and correct me, but helping people formulate a rule of life. And in fact, you're going to be doing a workshop with us, with the deacons and wives, soon. And I want to see if we can offer some of that conversation to a wider audience. So am I on the mark at all, or am I speaking a foreign language? Go ahead.
I think you're definitely on the mark, and it's probably helpful to just draw that distinction, right, between a rule of life and something like New Year's resolutions or goal setting, because a rule of life is really about the rhythms and relationships that we have in everyday life. And so we all have a rule of life, whether or not we're aware of it. We all have rhythms and relationships and routines and habits and just different ways of interacting with God and others. And so in that sense, it's not something that we're adding on or striving for. It's really more about paying attention to how we are being formed and how we can choose rhythms and ways of being in relationship with God and others that open us up to the grace of the Spirit already at work all around us. So there's a much beloved quote from the writer Annie Dillard, who says, "How we spend our days is how we spend our lives." And I think we're all aware just of with the hectic pace and noise and distractions and technology and the tyranny of the urgent and all the relational breakdowns, big and small, like our days can easily be consumed by all of that. And it's just so easy to let life happen to us. And so it's just recognizing, crafting a rule of life is about recognizing that we have agency and the power of the Spirit to consider and determine how we spend our days and who we are becoming in Christ.
Okay. Now we're going to have to go to a break fairly shortly, but I want to explore that and translate in that with you into how people can recognize these patterns. I think that's part of what you're saying, that we have patterns, how we recognize them and how we do something with what we might discover. Is that a fair conversation for the other side of the break?
That's great.
Okay. So we're going to go away and we'll be back momentarily. So stay tuned.
Like I have been baptized. Are you able? Are you able? For I have come not to be served, but to serve, to give my life, if you wish, to be the first you must see, to be a servant, to be a servant of all.
Community is core to Catholic Charity's founding mission. For more than 100 years, we have met people and families where they are, serving anyone in need, regardless of their faith, gender, race, or ethnicity. As our world absorbs the economic, political, and social aftershocks of the pandemic, 50% or more of the 6 million people living in Cook and Lake counties have little or no savings. They are a paycheck away from zero. We are deeply grateful to everyone in the Catholic Charities community who partners with us to alleviate the suffering of the people we serve and offer them a better path forward. We are witnessing a message of mercy and hope to a world very much in need. Learn more at CatholicCharities.net.
People always say, how can you spend your day with 3-year-olds? Seeing the changes that they go through and just the journey and how they grow, this is a very rewarding job. Even though at the end of the day, we're not the highest paid people on earth. And when I have a parent contact me and say, my child loves school, that to me, I'm setting that foundation for their love of learning, because really you are changing lives, you are molding lives.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
Do you have an old bicycle that's not being used? Consider donating it to Catholic Charities Veterans Bike Project of Lake County. Skilled volunteers are refurbishing bicycles to make them safe and ready to be used by veterans to get to and from their new places of work. We also gratefully accept financial contributions that are used to purchase bike helmets and other safety accessories. Our veterans have faithfully served the United States, and now it is our privilege to serve them. For more information on the Veterans Bike Project of Lake County, call 847-782-4219. That's 847-782-4219.
Not to be served, but to serve, to give my life, if you wish to be the first you must see, to be a servant, to be a servant.
Welcome back to Diakonia, a call to service. I'm Deacon Dave Brentzick, the Associate Director of the Diakon Office, joined by Deacon Richard Hudzik, the Director of Ongoing Formation. And our guest today is Tiffany Borio. Welcome back, Tiffany. And Richard was just brought up the subject of a rule of life. Richard, do you want to pick up from there?
Sure. Yeah, before the break, the way you phrased this conversation is intriguing, and that is we're talking in terms of the rule of life about discovering patterns that already exist in one's life. Is that fair to say? How do I see what's happening? You mentioned the urgent displacing the important, for instance. How do I see and what am I finding when I look? And is each person going to see something different? What's this look like?
Well, first, I think absolutely everyone is going to see something different, right? Because we all are very unique people with unique life circumstances and contexts and roles, responsibilities, relationships. So in that sense, how each person spends their days, at least in our context, will look quite different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helpful to remember, right? Because any talk about a rule of life stems from St. Benedict's rule, written in the 6th century, which was created for a community and for a group of monastics that were going to share a common rule. And so in many ways, their rule and the way that they spend their days and their roles and responsibilities were very similar. And there's a lot that we can learn from that, yet also recognizing, right, that we are in unique contexts and places. So it's wonderful to pay attention. And I think paying attention is the key, because you asked, like, how would I even notice? Like, what rule of life am I living into right now? And even just a simple audit, whether that's something you do literally with a piece of paper, or keep a diary for a few days, or just something that you're just being mindful of as you go through your day and your week? What are some of your routines and patterns? How do you start your day? What are the first 3 things you do, when you wake up every morning or before you go to bed every night? What are the just regular rhythms of your days and your weeks and your month and your year? And I think it's also helpful in this regard to do a bit of an examine and just to pay attention to, of those rhythms and routines, which ones bring, right, consolation, and what types of things am I engaged in that are bringing those feelings of desolation. And with the aim, right, for the rule to always be realigning our lives with our purpose, our values, and our relationship of giving and receiving love with God and other people.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, is it also part of trying to pinpoint, like, where has God touched my life today? And where did I experience God? Or how did I bring God to others? Is that part of this at all?
Yeah, in a sense, Dave, it's like a proactive way, right? So if I know that when I engage in these various practices, that it opens my heart or turns my attention toward God, right? Then it kind of creates a space for that. So the examine, we're usually looking back to see, okay, how, what transpired in this day or this event or this season, to identify. Whereas a rule of life, we're really thinking forward about how can I really open up that space so that I'm more consistently aware of God's presence and moving toward God in my daily life.
So one of the prerequisites for doing this strikes me that we need space, some space, mental space, spiritual space, and time in order to ever endeavor to make this sort of assessment. I mean, we can't run 180 miles an hour all day, every day, and ever hope to make these sorts of discernments. Is that fair to say, that we need to schedule some time to be thinking, praying?
Absolutely. And I think this is a wonderful example of when meeting with your spiritual director, working with a coach, attending a workshop like the one that we'll be doing with the deacons and their wives. These are all opportunities to create a space for that type of reflection that can help then set you on that path to crafting your own rule of life.
All right, and I do want to talk about that upcoming workshop, and also cognizant that most of the listeners or watchers of this conversation are not going to be at the workshop, but it's the general population. So I want to be certainly tuned into having everybody eavesdrop on our conversation and maybe get something for themselves if they're not able to attend the workshop. And so I guess let me just, we'll get to that. Let me ask, what do you envision the workshop to do, and what's to be gained from this workshop that is translatable to anybody listening in? But what's this going to be about?
So one of the things that we're going to focus on in the workshop is specifically paying attention to how we open ourselves up to that transforming work of the Spirit through various practices and rhythms and relational dynamics that are unique to our nature and our values and our lives. And then, right, like taking those habitual behaviors that we know help reconnect us with ourself and God, and and using them as a basis to craft a more comprehensive rule of life. And I think for leaders especially, it's so imperative that we're being intentional about our inner life, and that we are aware of how our inner and outer life are in alignment and congruency, because our leadership is for the sake of others. And yet recognizing and responding to God's presence is the invitation to anyone and everyone who desires a deeper life with God. So I'm hoping that all of the listeners here, any of the deacons that are able to attend, and their wives that are able to come with, that we will all just learn new ways of connecting with God moment by moment in our unique roles and responsibilities. So I'm really excited about doing that learning with you all.
What happens in a situation when, you said your inner and outer life, when they're not incongruent?
Ooh.
In
All sorts
4
of-
four
yeah.
minutes, can you explain that?
Well, I think that's right. That's when we see, especially when that's happening in leaders, that's when we start seeing a lot of things go off the rails, right? Because that can be not only harmful to oneself, when you have that incongruency, because that also probably represents a disconnect between you and God, but it also can create harm for others, right? When we're just not living in alignment with our values and our purpose, and how we are being called to lead and serve, and who God is forming in us. So that's why I just think it's so important that we're paying attention. And like Richard said earlier, it can be so easy to just fall to the tyranny of the urgent. And I know, serving in leadership myself, it's very easy for me to become task oriented, because that's just my nature, and I can check the things off and I can get them all done, and to miss that relational piece, both, right, with myself and with God and with others, when ultimately it's, from the basis of relationship, and particularly that relationship of abiding in the vine, that we are then able to minister from that space authentically and vulnerably and effectively and well.
Let me ask if, you talk about where we find life and grace and fullness, and say, I love being with my grandchildren, and it's a source of great joy. But I'm also, working in any kind of work or any kind of leadership. Things do not go as you want them to go. There's always conflict. There's distress. There's sorrow at somebody else's misfortune or problems, and that's can be very taxing, particularly for somebody who maybe, if I had my druthers, I'd walk along the seashore. Would I opt to be in the office and find life in the office? No. But yet, that's where I'm called to at the moment. How do I, here's the answer to all of life's problems right here in the next 45 seconds or so. But my proclivities, or where I think God has, in the way he's made me, is not fed in the times when I've got to deal with real life hard problems, and somebody's going to be hurt, somebody's going to be disappointed because of something I need to do or decide. How does the rule of life work with when life is not good, when life is not happy?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Richard, because I think you just provided some wonderful examples for us, right? Because a rule of life, it's not about a set of rules, right? It's really about these rhythms and relationships that help us to realign and to live a balanced, simple, prayerful life. So you identified like playing with your grandchildren, for example, is something that brings you joy and helps you find life. So working that into your personal rule of life, right, creates that space for play, creates a space for joy, creates a space for, right, like reconnecting with family and relationships and even with God in those moments. And so, yes, that's not going to be all of life, but being intentional about making sure that that is a part of your life, right, helps to provide some of that balance and energy and life-giving activities that can help when things are very difficult, when you do have to sit at your desk and do all the tasks. Right? So walking on the seashore, again, that's a great example. It's like, no, we cannot go out and do that every day, as delightful as that sounds, right? But think about how life-giving and refreshing that is. And over time, we learn how to carry some of those restful practices into our days and into the hard times. And so it's really about just finding that, right? Like, ooh, everything's going chaotic today. Everything fell apart. What do I need to do this evening that will help me to reconnect with myself and with God so that I am ready to come and be in relationship with others and do my work again tomorrow?
Well, that's good. So, Tiffany, very much looking forward to this. I'd love to have you back again and pick up this conversation. Dave, thanks for letting me come down out of my cave and join in the conversation. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Okay.
Tiffany, thank you. Richard, thank you. God bless everyone.
Thank you.
Welcome.